Namaste from Dhananjay and welcome to our journey that we are launching together after having produced about 220 videos on Great Minds, Great Quotes. We are back on our journey to reach them, reach their minds through their words. And the group of quotations for this video has a topic, self. So normally one would identify self as name, location, nationality, education, position, all those things. When somebody asks you to describe yourself, perhaps these are the things that one might say. But let's dive deeper into the meaning of self, search for self, knowledge of self, and who is seeking that knowledge. Who is that? So the first quotation is by Alfred Korzybski. Very short. Anything that you know about cannot be you. So this sort of confusion is basically in all our minds, that I am seeking to know myself. Which means if I am the self, the seeker, then what you are going to know is not yourself. So a self is wanting to know non-self. On the contrary, if I am not myself and I want to know myself, then the seeker is not the self who is seeking to know the self. So this confusion, I hope, will be resolved by the time we are done with this video, with many quotations showing a path to that discovery. So the quotation is, anything that you know about cannot be you. This is the same that anything you have cannot be you. For example, I have this book in my hand, so I am not the book. I have a mobile phone, a car, a house, my clothes, my hat. So these are the things I have. So that cannot be me. Similarly, anything that I know cannot be me, because I have knowledge of many things, as you do. I have knowledge about myself, description of myself, so I am not the description. I have the knowledge of my surrounding, I have the knowledge of this locality, this place, the grass and the trees, I have the knowledge of. Therefore, I am not that. So what I know cannot be me, what I have cannot be me. Then, who is that me? That is the quest, the ultimate search. Jalaluddin Rumi. Be the melting snow. Be the melting snow. Wash yourself of yourself. So how can the self wash itself? Because what is being washed is an illusion of the self, is a description of the self, is what you think about yourself. So what you think about yourself need to be washed. away like snow. What is left is yourself. When non-self has been moved away from you, has been washed away from you, then what remains is yourself. This is a useful hint by Nisargadatta Maharaj. Before pain was, you were. After pain had gone, you remained. Pain is transient. You are not. So the hint is that the self is permanent. The self is eternal. The layering of the self, the clothing of the self, the condition of the self can change. Before you had pain, you were, right? That is why you are having the pain, because you are. When the pain had gone, you remained. So the coming and going of pain is a transient aspect of your being. So do not identify yourself with the changing conditions about yourself, because conditions change, but the self does not. So this is an important hint that what is always in you. When you were a child, you were. You won't say that I wasn't present when I was a child. When you grew up, you are. When you grew older, still you are. So, the age factor is transient, is changing. Your location is changing. Your own idea about yourself is changing. So that cannot be you. The self is influenced by the change, but after change happens, the self resumes its identity. It never loses its identity. That is the point. Ellen Sue Stern says, believing in our hearts that who we are is enough is the key to a more satisfying and balanced life. Believing that who we are is enough. In other words, the self is sufficient by itself. What you own may be inadequate. What you are seeking may not have arrived yet. What you wish to do may not have happened yet. But that does not make the self incomplete. Self is always present, always complete, always enough. What your mind, your understanding, your knowledge may inspire you is to do something more, something better. So that is what you yourself will be doing. But what you will be doing will change, but you, the self, does not change. This is Ken Wilber. It seems that whenever we look for self, apart from experience, it vanishes. Whenever we look for self, apart from experience. So the hint is that the experience of the self is what matters. We have experienced, and that stays with us. When you learn to ride bike and you know to balance and pedal, that is your experience. It will stay with you. 10 years later, when you ride bike, you will not lose balance because you have experienced it. It is the outer knowledge that you have to memorize and remember to repeat That is not experience. That is, you acquire knowledge and you lose it. When that knowledge is understood and embodied, that acquires sort of permanence in you. So the quotation is, it seems that whenever we look for self, apart from experience, it vanishes. The subject and object always turn out to be one. Now this is important to note. The subject and object always turn out to be one. So we would be lucky if we have a sense of experience, if we realize that the one who is seeking is me and what is being sought is also me. It is not something outside of me that is myself and I am searching or I am wanting to know. That outside of me, other than me, is not the self. Self is what you are searching, and self is the one who is searching. So, in other words, this amounts to completing the knowledge of yourself, knowing yourself better by diving deep into your own being, not in a world outside of you. So searching for self by thinking about yourself would not lead you anywhere. Just experiencing yourself. What is happening? Oh, there is some thoughts are happening to me. I am imagining things. I am remembering things, but it is I who is present in all those activities. So that is the meaning here. The subject and object, the seeker and the sought, always turn out to be one. Alfred Tennyson. Self-reverence, self-knowledge, self-control. These three alone lead life to sovereign power. This is not the power of your might, of your tools, of your physical strength. This is the power of understanding, of experiencing. When you acquire that power, you have reached yourself, sovereign power. Now, what are the three qualities mentioned here? Self-reverence, respect yourself, honor yourself. Self-knowledge, know how to find yourself, how to know yourself. Remembering that subject and object are one. So the subject is not seeking the object and the object happens to be the self. The self is inspired, find it's necessary to know and experience itself. So you are yourself reaching a deeper understanding and experience of yourself. It is not two, it is one. So self-reverence, self-knowledge, self-control, these three alone lead life to sovereign power. Nisargadatta Maharaj, sooner or later you are bound to discover that if you really want to find, you must dig at one place only, within. Sooner or later you are bound to discover that if you really want to find, that is, find yourself, you must dig at one place only, within. Now the question is, what is within? It sounds like there is a boundary, so outside the boundary is without or outside, and inside the boundary is within. So the boundary here, defined as within, is exploring your inner being. in Sanskrit, antahkaran, your consciousness. You are conscious, that is how your mind works, because you are conscious. An unconscious person does not have a functional mind. Only a conscious person is able to move and do. So, the consciousness within, because of which you move about, you become active, your mind works. So, consciousness is the source, and that does not exist outside of you. It's not outside of your body alone that your consciousness exists in your body, but not only the body. It exists within your mind, and mind is both inside and outside the body. You can be thinking about some place or someone 1,000 miles away. It's not within the body. So within the body, within the mind, which means basically your experience and awareness, which has a vast spectrum, that is within, that is referred to here. The Upanishads, the big self is soul or spirit. So this quotation describes big self and little self, and one has to understand the difference. The big self is soul or spirit. When it becomes embodied, which means it enters your body, it forgets its true nature, which is bodiless, which is all pervasive. So the soul or spirit is all pervasive. That is the big self. When that big soul or spirit is embodied, gets a body, the one you have or the one I have, it becomes enmeshed in material creation, and this creates the little self. So, if somewhere you realize that my soul is kind of confined into a small world of my body mind, then you feel kind of restless, smallness, that it's too small, the world, the universe is too big. But when you can experience yourself both in your body and outside your body, within your limits of your mind and outside the limits of your mind, you are moving toward the universal self, the big self. And that journey is somewhere hidden in ourselves, within ourselves, inspires us to go beyond, to become universal or cosmic. So the journey from small embodied self to the cosmic self is what Upanishad defines as the spiritual journey, the journey of spiritual growth from small to endless. Joseph Campbell, the privilege of a lifetime is to be yourself, which means if there is self-realization in you, that is the privilege of a lifetime, which means the purpose of your existence is known to you and is in your experience and awareness. So, searching is a good sign, but searching itself is not the end. The privilege of a lifetime is to be yourself when the search ends. You are in fact yourself, nothing else. In Bhagavad Gita, the soul who meditates on the self is content to serve the self and rest satisfied within the self. So self is all that exists. It is our thoughts, our physical conditions that keep changing, and we get entangled into it and misidentify that as the self. So the soul who meditates on the self is content to serve the self and rests satisfied within the self. That is the state of bliss, of ecstasy, of ananda, and there is no opposite of that self, ananda. If you are happy, there is an opposite. You can be unhappy. If you are tired, there can be opposite, that at other times you are not tired. So the conditions that come with opposites can be confusing. That sometimes you are this, sometimes you are the opposite of that. Yes and no, this or that, positive, negative. So coming out of that duality is knowing of the self. The soul who meditates on the self is content to serve the self and rests satisfied within the self. Hermann Hesse: the true profession of a man is to find his way to himself. The most important occupation, the most important thing you can do in life, apart from making a living and doing things, apart from that, the most important aspect of your search is to find his way to himself. Nisargadatta Maharaj again, short quotation: the very idea I am self-realized is a mistake. Because if you are saying or thinking that I am self-realized, which means it is not the self which is thinking or knowing, still there is a duality. So a self-realized person cannot say that I am self-realized, because by saying that he is creating a gap, a distance between self-realization and myself. Therefore I can say I am self-realized, because you are still seeing the difference between I and self-realization. So get out of that sense of duality. That is the message. The very idea I am self-realized is a mistake. She Feng says, the whole world is you, and you keep thinking there is something else. Now, how the whole world is you? Because your vision, what you see, is what you think the world is. And the birds see something different, so for birds the world is different. Similarly, your thoughts, your assumptions, your beliefs, your ideas are different from everyone else's. Therefore, you live in the world that you create. You live in the world that you create, and you think that is the whole world, but it is not. The whole world is you. Now the bigger self that you understand and realize, for the bigger self the world is bigger. For the smaller self the world is smaller. So for the individual the world is unique. So the whole world is you, and you keep thinking there is something else. There is nothing else other than you. So the idea here is become the cosmic self. So the whole cosmos is you. Instead of creating a small world and calling that the world, because you are the world. The bigger you, the bigger the world. The infinite you, the word for the infinite you, is infinite. Another one by Nisargadatta Maharaj. There is the body. There is the body and there is the self. Between them is the mind, in which the self is reflected as I am. Remember, self is reflected. It is a reflection of the self. So reflection of the self is your understanding of the self, which is imperfect. And that is what produces ego in you. I am. When you say I am, you are defining yourself as something small or something different than the whole universe. So there is the body and there is the self. Between them is the mind, in which the self is reflected as I am. This quotation by Erwin Schrödinger: you will on close introspection find that what you really mean, I, is the ground, stuff on which all your experiences happen. So this is a pretty good definition of I. On close introspection, you will find that what you really mean, I, is the ground on which all your experiences happen. So most of us think or imagine I where all the experiences happen. So I know this, I think about this, I am aware of this, I remember that, I was that. All those experiences together is defined as I. Now this is a good starting point, but there is much more to explore in your self-awareness what I means. I, the one who is aware, and I, also the one you are aware of. You are aware of I and you are the I. So in other words, you are moving beyond duality and you are moving beyond the limits of your knowledge and experience. So this is a fantastic journey, and I'm sure the more you contemplate on it, the more you introspect, you will find that the confusion, contradiction that you started out with in your early search gradually shed away, and a very clear, a very crystal clear understanding and awareness arises in you. And when that happens, you are full of bliss and joy, nothing else. And the last quotation is by Dhananjay Kumar, and this gives the checklist, a kind of puts things in a perspective that if throughout your search, you are still conditioned by your early ideas at the beginning of your journey, how to avoid it. So the quotation is, make an exhaustive list of whatever you think you are. Make an exhaustive list of whatever you think you are. Chances are you are not on the list. In other words, the list one would prepare is what you think, what you believe, subject to incomplete experience. So no matter what you put on this list, I am this, I am that, I am my name, my body, my fame, my education, my position, my reputation, my locality, whatever else. You make a list of what you think you are. Chances are you, that is the self, is not on the list. So with that precaution, I'll close this video. Thank for your patience and listening, and we'll meet again soon. Namaste.